In lesson 6.4, you're just going to be getting a bunch of different types of word problems that have to do with systems of equations. We've already addressed some of them just in the first couple lessons of the unit. The main one that you've already addressed is your money problems, the one you've seen a lot of where it says something like, I spent this much money on this, and it equaled my total. I had this many of something. It was all those word problems that had to do with admission of tickets or what you bought at a store and how much it was worth and those types of things. So I'm not really going to review that in here. You need to go to your earlier lessons for that. But I do want to talk about the coin problems for a minute because these can get a little bit confusing. When you're talking about coins or bills, you need to think about the same idea. Typically, one of them is going to be about how much each coin or bill is worth, very similar to the money. So one equation about how much money, and then one equation is typically going to be about how many you have. So it's very similar to the money problems, which is why I'm putting it together. But there's a couple things I see people make mistakes with, so I just want you to look at a few examples, and then we'll move on to the next kind. Copy example 1 down, and when you're ready, hit play. So what you have to look for, one of these is going to be how much money you've got. The other one's about how many. The money on these coin ones is actually kind of included in the fact that it is a nickel and a dime, because you know how much money a nickel is worth and you know how much money a dime is worth. So that's where you just have to be aware of that in here. Right away, how many of each coin did he have? We know nickels and dimes are our two variables. So N equals nickels and D equals dimes. Now you want to set up your first equation, and it says Antonio had 3 times as many nickels as dimes. This is where these get really confusing, and you've really got to stop and think about it. And if you have to draw a picture or something, it's not worth getting these wrong. It says he has 3 times as many nickels as dimes. You need these to equal out. So N has to equal D. If he has 3 times as many nickels, that means he has more nickels. So what are you going to have to do to the dimes to get them to equal the nickels? You're going to have to multiply the dimes by 3 because he has more nickels. It's opposite from what it looks like because it looks like 3N equals D. But if you were going to take 3 times your nickels, you'd have even more nickels since he has more. You have to be really careful when it's worded that way. So always stop and look at which one has more and then make sure you're catching the other one up to it by either adding or multiplying. Sometimes you can also subtract from the one that has more, but dividing by 3 here, that could have been the other way to look at it. He has 3 times as many nickels, so I take my nickels and I divide them by 3. But if you did that, you'd end up multiplying by 3 over here anyway. So there's a couple ways you set it up, but you just have to make sure that you're looking at does it really balance out. And you might even try a number you know, like let's say he has 3 times as many nickels. So let's just say, okay, well he has 3 dimes, he has 3 times as many nickels, so then that means that he should have 3 times 3, which is 9, so he should have 9 nickels, 3 dimes, 3 times 3 is 9. Pick a really easy number like that to make sure your equation worked. Then your second equation, you have to talk about the value, because it's equal to $1. So something is going to equal $1. Right here it said $1. How much is a nickel worth? It's worth 5 cents, so you have 5 cents for every nickel, and you need to be careful here. It's not a 0.5, it's 0.05. Plus 10 cents for every dime equals your $1. You have to really watch that because now you're going to do a decimal buster. If you forgot the 0.0 here, then you would have done a decimal buster and you would have had 50 instead of 5. So you have to be really careful about that. And then you always want to do a decimal buster with these. So everything moves over 2, which is why I started as $1. And now I have that equation written as 5n plus 10d equals 100. My other equation was n equals 3d. Hopefully most of you are getting good at this enough now to see that this is a substitution problem. So I'm going to go ahead and circle, since that's my isolated variable, and I'm going to plug it in for n over here. And now most of you know what to do from here, I hope. 5 times 3d plus 10d equals 100. And I end up with 15d plus 10d equals 100. Combine my terms, 25d equals 100. Divide both sides by 25 and I get dimes equals 4. Now if I have 4 dimes, then I'm going to have 4 times 3, which is 12 nickels. So nickels equals 3 times my 4. Nickels equals 12. And then check it and make sure. Read it again. Okay, so I have 3 times as many nickels. Did I end up with more nickels? Yes. If I ended up with more dimes, I know I swapped those accidentally at the beginning. And then I would write it as an answer. He has 12 nickels and 4 dimes. Let's just practice 2 of these. I'm not going to make you go through the whole problem again because you should be getting good at this part. Just setting up is what I want to focus on. If we had some type of word problem here where it ended up saying you had 5 more pennies than dimes, when you look through here, you need to think about what 5 more means. And again, you need to think of it the opposite way. He has more pennies. So you either need to take away from the pennies to get to dimes, or you need to add to dimes to get to pennies. It's the opposite. You're not just going to say plus 5, P plus 5 equals D. You have to think opposite here because he already has more pennies. So when you go to set that up, it's pennies equals something with my dimes. And now you have to decide. I have 5 more pennies, so I'm going to add those 5 to my dimes to get these to be equal. Or, if you see it this way, I have more pennies, so in order to set it equal to my dimes, I need to take away the 5 extra. And notice for solving equations, you could subtract 5 and you'd have that. You could add 5, you'd have that. So they mean the same thing, just set up a little different. So you're going to have either multiplication or division, or addition or subtraction, however you see those. Let's move on to the next kind. The other 2 types of problems you're going to see in today's lesson are mixture problems, which was actually lesson 2.6. So when you get to the mixture problems, if you forgot how to set up the chart and solve those, you can either watch lesson 2.6 notes again if needed before this chapter ends, or look at your notes, practice the problems we get in class, make sure you understand them because they will be on this test. And then we're also going to see the break-even and cost the same problems again. You saw those in chapter 2, but in chapter 2 you didn't set them up as a system of equations. You set them up as one. You'll see these in today's lesson. You're going to set them up just like you've been setting up all your other problems. Something equals, like your total cost equals an amount of money plus a starting cost or plus a cost per something, and then another equation, and these usually end up being substitution. These are almost set up always as substitution. So when you work on these in class, let me know if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm not going to do more examples on these since we've covered a lot of similar things.